Hello, ghouls and goblins. Mina here, and welcome to another video on this YouTube channel. Today, I wanted to not necessarily do like a ranty video, but just to hold space for those of us who are healers slash magic workers, especially if you are new to offering services to clients. And I want to just talk a little bit about boundaries. In the holistic healing world, in the magical space, in the witchy space, in all of these spaces where we conduct workings for humans in a healing, unfolding, magical, energetic capacity, there's been a lot of back and forth around the monetary aspect of such a thing. There's been, people with different views that have spoken about in the past whether or not healing sessions should be free as a default. Perhaps hundreds of years ago, there wasn't any sort of energy exchange for such a thing, but we live in a reality with cause and effect. We live in a reality of some sort of energy exchange. And especially in today's day and age where we spend $15 to $20 on like a damn fast food meal, those healing sessions, those magical sessions are really not a big deal compared to all the garbage that we spend our money on. So it's really interesting how sometimes people get so choked up, they get so triggered if money is a part of the conversation at all. And that's a them problem, not an us problem. And so I really want to talk about boundaries as a healing practitioner. So for my life, I have struggled to market my magic, to market my healing services. And I think that I've done some self-sabotaging to limit my success in this capacity. And I don't know if it's because I just needed to delve more into what boundaries look like for me in my practice. But in my current reality, I have my website that's up. It's called dragonfirereiki.com. Right now, I only have some services listed, but in the future, there will be more products based on certain things that are unfolding right now within a shamanic course that I'm taking. I'm somebody who, has been in the magical community for 20 years, but I've never taken a shamanic course. And so I like to continue with the mindset of always a student, so that way I can continue to learn and expand what I have access to and what I also offer. And so one of the things that I'm actually very grateful for in my life currently, even though it's really hard to wrap one's mind around it because, being a magic worker or a healer, we want to live more in the astral plane, more in, other dimensions, working with our guides. And so it can be very challenging for us. And I'm sure many people have made videos on this conversation. It's very challenging for us to be in day jobs, go to work at a grocery store or in the corporate office and be like, yeah, here I am just doing my thing, but I'm actually, a Reiki master or a tarot reader or witch or whatever on the side. And so I struggled back and forth with that a lot, but it really was hard for me to figure out how to market my magic. I just don't want to be somebody who is like, you need this service, So I have come to a place in my life where I do have a night job that pays me well. And I have used my abilities and through trial and error, so coupled with muggle mindset and magical mindset, and implementing both into manifesting this job that I've been at for 18 months now. It's rainbow time. It's rainbow time of the day. I'm in my Reiki room right now, and there are rainbows in this room. So I love my day job, my night job, because I work evenings, and I make plenty of money with it, enough money to pay my bills. So I don't need my magical and healing practice to pay my bills. And I think that it's easier for me to establish boundaries without relying on clients in order to pay our bills. And that can be a very challenging energy to play around with, because frankly, people are a hot mess right now. And it has not gotten easier, and the personal responsibility and accountability has not improved. There have been quite a few practitioners that I've seen over the past year that have stopped. They have stopped offering sessions to others. They have stopped offering classes and workshops. And they're like, frankly, I just can't with people anymore. There was a good friend of mine that we had taken a Reiki class together, and then they also took a class from me as I was, moving within my master certification course. They really didn't like their muggle job, and so they branched out and decided to, rent a space in a yoga studio and offer Reiki services and like a monthly developmental circle. And I don't think it lasted a year. They actually made pretty decent money for their first year, but where they struggled was with their clients and with their boundaries. And so it's a conversation that we have to have, because sometimes we feel like being in the healing community, I would say this is more healing based than magical based. I think as healers, we maybe put more pressure on ourselves and maybe are more forgiving and making excuses for clients' bad behavior. And so a friend of mine had spoken about where, the circle was donation based, as often we do in healing and magical circles, and people didn't take it seriously. And there were many weeks where they received 0 donations. And my friend was like, I put a lot of energy and effort into this. And I just want to hand us all a permission slip to say, this doesn't need to be donation based anymore. It's 2025. Like, we're evolving. We don't have to be like, hey, this is just free for you to come and, not take it seriously and, feel like you can get a handout and then leave. And I will just sit here and do all this work for no energy return for me. We don't need to do that anymore. Come up with a price that you are comfortable with for what you are offering within that workshop, and say, this is the charge and I need it before you arrive. And if we don't have this many people, if it's less than 2 people, we're going to cancel that week or something. The time and energy that we as healers put in to the work that we offer for others, it matters, and it's not to be dismissed. It's not. So I think that we should normalize just having a set charge for circles, whether it's, the monthly ESPIDs or like a spiritual circle or, a psychic medium circle, anything like that, and pay ahead of time, because there are some people that just kind of bounce around and they're trying to get whatever they can, but they're not giving back. And I think that, we take our responsibility as healers very seriously with the developmental work that we're doing, the way that we are disciplined within our own human experience with what we're consuming, how we are surrounding ourselves, what sort of developmental exercises we are doing on a regular basis to be pure and high vibe channels for offering in and holding space for others. And if we're doing all that without so much as, a monetary return or something of equal energy exchange, or at least some sort of energy exchange, is very depleting for us. And I think that's why some people are like, I'm just not going to do it anymore. I have a better time just focusing on my own practice and just emanating my vibe within this experience. And that technically is good enough. So a situation happened with me fairly recently because, my Reiki room, I have actually decided to double it as a guest room. I think that's a great idea for people that visit. They'll be able to kind of build off of the magic and healing and great frequency that's in this space, specifically where we're at right now. I actually have my Reiki bed right here. But I put the bed away because I had a guest that came by and stayed with me for a week, and they were in this room. And so, there was a person that called me earlier in the week and was inquiring about a session. And so we had talked about, what to expect with a session. My website's right there next to my phone number, so they could have very easily just purchased a session and then given me a call. I have reviews on my website. The website's active. You can go all the way to purchase. Like, it's updated. I do this, but because it's not something that I openly advertise, because it's not something that I have a huge following since I had reset my social media, I don't have a lot of clients coming across my threshold. So when I do, it requires some time for me to dedicate this space for a client coming in. I got to make sure all my sheets are clean, that no cats have jumped in the basket where the blankets are, vacuum, I sage, I incense, I singing bowl, like the whole space. I am working on having a consistent developmental practice within myself, so that way I never feel like, oh, it's been too long since I've done a session. Can I still XYZ to provide such and such? Which honestly is just imposter syndrome from us as healers. Even if we've taken a little bit of time in between clients, like once you're in that space, the energy just flows. And for those of you who are practicing healers, you know this. So, it gets to the point of us talking about scheduling a session when this person had called on the phone. And I said, okay, that sounds great. An hour-long session is going to be $75. It's actually a little bit more on my website. It's like $77.77. And they had actually asked about doing a cord cutting add-on, which would have been $88 on the website for that edition. But I was like, it'll be $75, no problem. And I said, how would you like to pay? I would like you, my ask is that I receive payment at least 24 hours before. And so they had mentioned Venmo. And like I said, I have a website. So like, you could have just purchased through the website. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll go ahead and shoot you a text. And when I had mentioned in the conversation, I asked for payment 24 hours before, there was a part of the phone call that I could tell this person was a little like, oh, okay. So that was many, many days ago before our session was coming up. And so, obviously the vibes are this person is feeling weird about having to pay for a session before they get the session. And I'm wondering from their perspective why that was. Why would you feel weird to pay for something before you receive it? There have been times where I had purchased a session from, I think her name was Zoe out in London. I just came across this website and this Reiki practitioner, and her name was Zoe, and I purchased this. I spent like $230 for like an angel reading and a Reiki session, and she was doing, I think, some tonal stuff within there as well. And I didn't care, because the thing is if I know that I need someone to hold space for me, and I gravitate towards someone's service specifically, there's a reason. And so if I'm going to get so hung up on a few bucks that I will get more of next payday, if I can't trust that me purchasing a service will result in me receiving that service, if I can't even trust that exchange, then how am I going to trust and be open and receptive to this healing practitioner to go in and help release and revitalize my different bodies? That's a good question. And if, perhaps somebody's ask makes me feel uncomfortable, then as the client, I need to practice good communication and say, hey, Mina, I know that you asked for payment 24 hours before the session. I don't get paid until the day of. Is there any way that I can just pay you when I arrive at your place? I'll confirm that I'm on my way. I want you to know that I am showing up, but would it be okay for me to do this? Communication, baby, come on. And so what ended up happening with this client was, and this is the first time that I've done this, actually. In the past, I haven't asked for payment beforehand if they just called me versus purchasing through my website. I wait until they're here and I wait until they offer it. And it just is this awkward situation. It's awkward for me because I don't know if it's even happening or if they're just trying to exploit what I'm offering. After we have this lovely healing experience and then they're like, here's $80, bro. That's kind of weird too. The whole situation is just a little bit weird. And I don't know if it's because we are weird with money, but I really wish that we could practice healthy communication and not be so weird with money. If I'm telling someone, hey, I'd love to have payment 24 hours before our session begins, and they're like, oh, that's a little unusual compared to what I'm used to. Can you tell me why? And then I'd be like, absolutely, I'll tell you why. I have no problem having this conversation. But it was interesting because they had this awkward moment of oh, okay. I'm not your therapist. I'm not going to dig in and be like, oh, that seemed to have given you a weird response. Do you want to tell me? You know what I mean? As clients, we also have to have some accountability on our part in communicating with the people that are holding space for us. And so with this particular person, I was like, well, we'll see what happens. So their session was going to be way earlier than I normally do sessions. So that was going to be an exception. Their session was also going to double book with the time that I normally take my teenage kiddo to work. So they would have had to walk. That's another exception. And I'm just not willing to make so many exceptions for people that aren't willing to communicate and aren't willing to invest in their own healing pathway any longer. I'm just not. And it's because I'm solid in what's important to me and what my boundaries are. And I don't need their service. I don't need it. I can pay my bills. And so if they want it and they resonate with me, then they can communicate and they can follow the ask, or they can present a different energy exchange conversation if they're unsure or questioning why I'm presenting my service a certain way. So I ended up texting this person and said, hey, we have you scheduled for this time. I asked payment to be sent 24 hours. Here's my Venmo. If anything happens, if anything comes up or changes, please let me know. Text delivered, groovy. They never responded. There wasn't really a question in there, but healthy communication would look like, perfect, sounds good. I will keep you posted, some sort of reply. So the day before the session rolls around and I'm checking Venmo and I'm not seeing any payment. I'm checking my texts. I'm not seeing any texts. There's no sort of information as far as planning on submitting payment, still wanting to come by. And in the past, I would have sent another text to them and said like, hey, just reaching out, our session's tomorrow. Are you still, coming by? Are you still planning on coming by? And I didn't this time because I wanted to see, there's got to be some accountability for the client. There just has to be. Because what some people do is they are so unsure about investing in their own spiritual development because, it's not like buying a cheeseburger or a purse or a bag. You're investing into the subtle realm. You're investing into the energy world. And some people have a hard time wrapping their mind around that with monetary exchange. And I wish that we could move past that as well, because who cares, guys? It's money. We make more of it. Let's be grateful. Let's be trusting, So yeah, day before, no text, no payment. And then by the time it was 8:30 that night, so I gave them the whole day and I just wanted to see, and by the time it was 8:30 at night, I sent them a text and I said, hey, just wanted to reach out. I haven't received payment from you yet. At this point in the night, I'm not going to work on setting up that room, and I have not set up that room yet. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel on our session tomorrow. And if you feel called to try again, you may absolutely reach out. Other than that, have a great weekend. I'm not here to patronize anyone. I'm not here to fight with anyone. I'm not here to but I'm not here to give freebies either anymore. And I'm not here to be exploited and taken advantage of. And my time means a lot. And so, that might make me appear a certain way to people. Maybe that I don't know, that I don't know how that would make me appear, if it would be something negative. But boundaries are super important to me. And the older I get, the more that not just speaking my boundaries, but living them, embodying them is super crucial. And I do it all the time now. And I really try to have a practice of doing that, because otherwise I'm the doormat and I'm doing all this effort for somebody that may or may not show up. There are lots of clients that, and this is what I was going to say earlier, they're so wishy-washy in what they actually want for their healing journey. They're unsure. They're not sure at all. And so they'll purchase things or they'll set up appointments and then they'll just disappear. And then they'll just ghost their practitioner that, is holding space for them. It's one thing if you do that at a store that's open all the time, or you do that to a doctor's office or something like that. I mean, it's not good practice in any capacity. But it's one thing if somebody is at a physical location anyway, whether your session happens or not. It still kind of sucks if they had time carved for you and had to turn other clients away. But if they're already at a location, they're already here irregardless. But for somebody like me, who what I'm doing is appointment based. I'm not just here sitting in this room waiting for somebody to knock on my door and ask for a Reiki session. I have a lot of other things going on. And so for me, that would be so much more impactful when a situation happens and I'm just ghosted and I didn't receive payment beforehand or anything that gives me safety and security for the time that I'm dedicating to it. So I think that it's important for us to normalize our boundaries. I think that it's important for us to, ask for payment beforehand and to, let somebody know, if you don't cancel within, at least 24 hours in advance, there's going to be a deposit that's kept. I think that it's okay for us to expect our clients to have some sort of accountability with how they are also communicating. We're adults. We're all adults, we all have to have some sort of accountability. Before this client, I had somebody that had reached out to me and wanted to purchase 4 Reiki sessions for their dogs. And that ended up actually being a scam artist because they had mailed me a check and then they were like, oh, I accidentally sent you a check with an extra zero. If you can just send the money back. And it hadn't even cleared. I'm like, sure, when it clears, the bank. I'm getting calls from the bank, like, where did this check come from? This is clearly fraud, and all this stuff. And like, this person targeted me, who has like a tiny business. So in today's day and age, where so much of our external reality within our culture and environment and politics and all of these things, and hate and violence and pain and all of these horrible things that so many people are projecting to one another, the easier thing to do is to quit. The easier thing to do is to say, I can't hold space for people anymore. Nope, just for me now. But I would rather us to challenge ourselves to grow and to say, let me think about what my boundaries are within this. What are certain parameters that I need in order to show up as my best self with a clear pathway to channel and help this client? And as the practitioner, it's super important for us to do that. And I also want to say that it's okay for our boundaries and our requirements. It's okay for these things to change and evolve over time. When we first step into a practice where we're offering readings to clients, we might not know what subjects we're not comfortable to read for. When we first open up space to Reiki clients or other holistic healing practices, we might not know what boundaries need to be embodied and put into place. When we start a group or a circle, we might not know what requirements we are asking those who are participants, what we are asking from them, in order to help add to it instead of just be there to psychic vampire pull from it. So our boundaries and our requirements may evolve and change over time. But those of us who are truly here to offer space and help with those who find their way here, it's important for us to be okay to have those difficult conversations, because ultimately it'll help our clients to grow as well. Because if they are able to just go in and treat your circle like it's a joke and not take anything seriously, and then not pay their donation either, and then come back next month and do it again, and there's no repercussion for that kind of bad behavior, then why would they stop? Why would they change? So it's an interesting conversation to have. There might be people that have many different outlooks on it. This is the outlook that I am currently adopting because, I have gone through the I'm just going to give up phase in the past because I didn't know what my boundaries were. And then they started getting crossed all over the place and it was overwhelming and I had to give up. And that was last year when I had attempted to start a coven out in the Midwest where I lived. Wow, it was crazy, but there were so many people interested. And if instead of giving up, I said, okay, shutting down for 2 weeks, I need to reestablish my boundaries and what I actually require from my participants, and then we'll start again, I could have gone that route instead. And that's why I'm going that route right now with my practice. And that will continue to evolve over time. And maybe I will hold space for a coven again, or maybe not even a coven, but just like opening up space for circle. And people are going to come across my platform and they're going to be like, wow, this is not like most practitioners, what you're requiring of people. And that's fine. That's totally fine. I know what I need in order to be in a good spot. And it needs to be enjoyable for me too. Like with the coven that I had started last year and how quickly all of my boundaries were just like perverted, it became so horrible for me immediately where I was like, what is happening? I'm dreading this now. I'm not even having fun. I feel like I'm doing all the work and just performing for people versus having people that are actually curious and willing to do the work to help themselves grow. And that's not fun for me. I do that. I can do that alone. Like if somebody wants to join my group or circle, I expect them to help participate, to take initiative, to do some research, to work on their own development in their personal time, and there has to be more accountability if people aren't willing to do that as our clients. So let this be your permission slip. Share your stories if you've experienced any of those things as well. Of course, the comment section is free to your disposal for asking questions or sharing stories or even challenging my topics of conversation here. I'm open to that as long as we can hopefully be respectful in our communication. But thank you so much for being present for this conversation. I think that it's a very important one to have, and maybe one in this particular capacity that hasn't been had enough. So it needs to be had again. So thank you so much for being present for it. Stay wild and spooky, but most of all, stay magical. This is Mina, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, take care.